You ever get into a deep conversation with a devoted Catholic, love the Catholics, not saying anything bad about them, on why they have to follow all of the things that they do. They're, you know, we'll call it a ritual, right? Maybe that's not the right word, but from communion and the way they take it, and when they can take it, and when they can be baptized, which is as a child, right? You take all of that, and you ask why. You have to ask a devoted Catholic why, and they'll legitimately tell you, well, it's because God gave the keys to man, and man has the keys, and He sets the laws on what should be done. I had this conversation with a really devoted Catholic, great guy. He's one of my great friends too. He used to work for us. You might even remember him, Alex Jimenez. He's in the BDC.
Oh, he speaks more fluent Spanish, right?
Yes, but I mean, he's there at, what is it? Mass is at 5 or at 7, something like that in the morning, every day. He doesn't miss it at all. Follows it. I mean, everything the way it should be done. I asked him one time. I said, why is all this set this way? Why are all these laws created in the Catholic religion? And he says, well, let me take you to this verse. He takes me to this verse, and on his phone, and he says, you see, God gave man the keys to the kingdom, so man sets forth the laws, and these were the laws that were created in the Catholic Church. This is why it's this way. This is why it has to be done this way. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, that's completely taken out of context.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just
so
my
as an example or a general example, you're talking about like maybe like the saying of the rosary 50 times. I don't know exactly what they want. 10 rosaries, 10 Hail Marys, or whatever, example. Like that or something like that.
Great example.
They're kind of like traditions of the Catholic Church that aren't necessarily
their doctrine and their laws.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Their doctrine and their laws, and the reason that they have to follow them is mainly because of that. It goes back thousands of years.
You know how I kind of see that from like where it all started? So you remember when really God called Moses up to Mount Sinai, mm-hmm. and God told Moses, he says, hey, in 3 days, we're going to meet on Mount Sinai. I'm paraphrasing, of course, right? Basically tells Moses, hey, Moses, tell the people to consecrate themselves, don't have sex for 3 days, this and that, because in 3 days we're going to meet. Now, if you read the scriptures, and you kind of got to meditate on it deeply, but basically in a nutshell, Moses goes up the mountain, and then God tells him, hey, bring the elders up, right? Yeah. But he's very specific, because God says, hey, make sure that you might die and all of this stuff. But at a point, he tells the elders to come up, and the elders tell Moses, he says, hey, look, we don't want to get close to the mountain because we're afraid we might die. He says, you just go up there, and everything God tells us to do, we'll do it, right? Yeah. And my point of that story is, man, I was meditating on that deeply one day, and I was like, man, it seems like God is the one that wanted the relationship, and man was the one that wanted the religion. Mm. Because when you have religion, it's like, hey, just give me the rules to follow. There's not a requirement of the relationship. Mm-hmm. Relationship is different, and it's kind of like, man, sometimes one wants the rules, but it's scary, right? Yeah. Because in relationship, this was the risk. You get so close to the holiness of God, you might mm-hmm. die. Yeah. You know what I mean? And people don't want to die to themselves. Yeah. It is deep, bro. And that's kind of how I see all religions like that in general. But yeah, the Catholic Church is very religious in the sense of ritualistic, and these rituals and routines that they go through that really aren't biblical. They kind of got their own. They got the catechism and stuff like that. But as far
because you have to really understand that the catalyst between your relationship with God, Christ, is the Holy Spirit. That's the Spirit is the catalyst that brings you together. During prayer or during worship, a lot of times, you feel that presence of the Holy Spirit, and then what does it do? That's your catalyst to your conversation with Christ. And then a lot of people miss that.
Bro, that's huge.
Yeah, and so like I'm gonna get goosebumps, talking about it. And I mean, everybody's different, right? To some, their relationship with the Holy Spirit could be, and you have to understand, God made us extremely creative, right? So to some, it could be playing the guitar. You know, when I was on stage playing for the church, which many years ago, for a long time, I can tell you, I would just close my eyes and pray and play, and that was my relationship, like doorway. You know, that was where the Holy Spirit I would feel the Holy Spirit. You know, and then I'd have that, you know, maybe a small conversation with God on stage while I was playing. And I don't even remember what I was doing, but I was just doing it. It was just muscle memory because I knew the song. By the time I knew it, the song was ending. And I'm like, whoa, like what just happened here?
Yeah.
And then to some, it could be drawing. You know, we had some years ago, a guy an artist that came to our church, previous church, Mercedes Christian Church, and still call it my home. And, you know, he came and he says, I basically preach through art. And so the guy, he's with his hands painting, you know, on this black canvas.
Yeah.
It's like everybody, there's music playing. Everybody's just so tuned in to this guy that you can feel the presence of the Holy Spirit come into the building. There's nobody talking. It's just him drawing. And when he's done, we look at the photo or the painting, I'm sorry, everybody's mind blown. Like, okay, cool. Like, did this guy just throw paint on a black canvas? And then he does something extraordinary. He turns it around, upside down. And this is a photo. It's my wallpaper. It's a lion.
Dude, is that the guy that did the painting that's right there when you walk in?
It could be. I didn't see it.
The lion and the lamb?
Yeah.
It might be the same. He has an art studio in Texas, and what's it called?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is, you know, going back to, you know, the relationship with God and Christ, and how you open that path or door or whatever you want to call it, is the catalyst, and that catalyst is the Holy Spirit. And through some it's different. Through me it's guitar. Through some it's singing. Through some it's art. You know, through some it could be anything because we're creative humans.
I feel like to me it's speaking, bro.
Yeah.
It's speaking. I feel like God, the way he communicates with me, and it's not to others, but he speaks to me like that, and then I feel like I speak like that way, and it's like kind of like words of knowledge that's spoken of as a gift in the scriptures.
Oh yeah.
But man, sometimes I'll be reading the Bible, and through that reading, it's like God will start speaking to me, bro, and giving me words of knowledge and revelation, and it's not even coming necessarily from the particular scripture that I'm reading. He could be just ministering to my soul. Like an example that I give of that all the time is, I remember I was at a season of my life where I was asking God, what if I sin? You know, like I wanted to surrender my life to the Lord, and I wanted to be faithful to him, but there was this roadblock, there was this barrier, and the barrier, what was the question of what do I do with sin when I mess up? What do I do? Do I get rebaptized in the water? Do I walk up to the altar that next Sunday and reconsecrate myself, lay hands on me? I mean, what do I do?
Yeah.
You know? And I remember reading this scripture, and the parable was a story of Jesus, and it says he was speaking to thousands, right? Thousands of people were following Jesus, and he comes to this point in his preaching where he says, unless you drink of my blood and eat of my flesh, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. And it says at that point a lot of people started murmuring amongst each other. This is a hard saying for us to understand. What is Jesus talking about? It says a lot of people walked off and discontinued following Jesus at that point. Jesus was apparently grieved by that because he looks at his disciples and he says, are you guys going to leave me too? And Peter said, where do we have to go, Lord? You have the words of eternal life, right? And in that moment, man, Jesus ministered to me about my question. And he says, if you mess up, where do you have to go? Are you going to go to your friends, go back to drinking, partying, girls, your family? You know what I mean? He says, haven't you found out by now that nobody has more love for you than I do, more mercy for you than I do, more power to rearrange and change the circumstances of your life more than I do? Nobody. He says, if you mess up, you come back to me and let me be God. You know what I mean? Ask for forgiveness. Haven't you seen I have forgiveness for you? You know what I mean? And mercy for you. Let me be God and decide what I'm going to, you know what I mean? As far as judgment goes. But you just come back. And the scriptures over and over and over again tell that story that God is calling us to come back. The prodigal son, you know what I mean? The one who lost the coin searches the whole house for that one coin. The shepherd who, that one sheep strays off, he leaves the 99, goes after the sheep. I mean, it's a reoccurring story and theme in the Bible. And I don't know why I didn't trust it up to that point. Yeah. But that was the defining moment for my life. Revelation.
Yeah.
So that's an example of that word of knowledge, bro. But yeah, man, quick question. When did you have that kind of revelation of the Holy Spirit in your life, that it's the catalyst for like kind of relationship with God? Can you think of one particular?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say just I never really knew what that relationship with, God and Christ was. My mom would take us to church. We grew up pretty, I'm not gonna say, poor or poverty, but we didn't grow up with, everything in life. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. We didn't grow up with everything in life. We had just enough. And so my mom started taking us to church at Mercedes Christian Church. We were Catholics before. I got baptized. I did my communion. I did all of that. I have photos with my godparents. I did all of that. And then one day, my mom just got up and said, hey, we're switching churches, in a nutshell. And we started going to Mercedes Christian Church. And I remember I'd sit in the pews, Pastor Don. Pastor Don.
Yeah.
Amazing guy. And Randy and Roland. And I'd see them, and I'd be there in the pews and I'd be thinking, like, wow, these are amazing God of men. How do they have a relationship with God? And how can I somehow have a piece of that, right? With everybody else, you see everybody else praise and worship, and some of the folks that had been there for a long time, they had that relationship. I'd close my eyes, I'd pray, I'd worship, and nothing. And that's okay, right? Because I think a lot of people go through this. They're trying to find, well, God hasn't spoken to me, or I haven't felt that before. I haven't felt that presence, But it wasn't until they needed a guitar player. I don't remember if they needed a guitar player, if I was like, hey, I play guitar too. Mike Garza, your primo, good guy, man. He was, I believe he was already on stage, but he played solo guitar. Great guitars, by the way, too. And he was on stage playing, so I remember I go up to Randy, and I talked to him for a little bit. I said, well, why don't you come to some of our practices? I go to some of their practices. And make a long story short, I ended up on stage and I ended up playing acoustic guitar, and still play to this day. And from that moment, I'll never forget. I mean, I can't give you the exact date, but I was on stage and I'm playing guitar, and the lights are off, and we're playing a worship song. And it was at that moment, just boom, just this feeling. It's a really tough feeling to explain when you just know that your communication with God has opened up in its own way through that Holy Spirit, and I mean, it'll give you goosebumps, you'll.
And had you already like giving your life to God,
yeah.
or like sort of and all that, baptized, water baptized, and all that?
Had already gone through all of that with Roland. He was our youth pastor, amazing youth pastor. Just feel like, maybe one of the things that we'll touch on later on is having pillars in your life.
Yeah.
There's an old saying that says, when you ask me how far I could see, it's not because of how tall I was. It's because of the shoulders of the giants that I sat on.
Yeah.
And I feel like, just going back to that, he was a pillar, and he's a big pillar in my young childhood life growing up, and I will always give him so much just credit.
Yeah,
he doesn't even look for that. I know, he's such a humble guy.
You ever heard that song? And I'm a horrible singer, bro, but I feel like that song sums it up. That thank you for giving to the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
I am alive.
That's a classic.
I was changed, man, bro. I agree, bro. I feel like if there's this metaphorical stairway to heaven, I feel like every step is a person in your life that you've had an encounter with, that they've said or done something that's just stuck with you, bro. And when you look back in retrospect, 20 years down the line,
Mm-hmm.
you look back and you're like, man, that wasn't that person. Like, it was.
Yeah.
But he was the conduit for God speaking through that person.
Yeah.
He was, the Holy Spirit speaking through that person.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about that because, I can remember having just met someone for one day, maybe 5 minutes. And, I'll give you an example. After I graduated high school, I took a horrible turn to just the party life. I just call it the party life, right? Just sum it up in a nutshell. Took a horrible turn to the party life. Had 2 kids, separated you know, and kind of had pretty much like a split custody, you know, of them. Um, and I was in my own head, I'm thinking, like, I'm living this life and I enjoy all of these things, you know, and it was the worldly things that I was enjoying, and I wasn't necessarily doing the things that I knew I had to be doing. And I can't remember the exact person who I met, but they said something to me, and it may have been at church. I just can't remember exactly where it was, but they say you are always one step away from a completely different life. And that was like a boom moment for me, because I said, okay, here I am living this life. I was going this way, but now, guess what? Tomorrow I can wake up and I can take that step to a completely different life. And I did, and I'll never forget that moment. But
Yeah.
to your point, right? Sometimes the person that you meet, that pillar in your life, may have just been a 5-minute person that you met.
Yeah.
It may have been a bad experience.
And you know, speaking about the Holy Spirit being the catalyst to our relationship with God, you know, and I feel you're right. I agree 100%. I wish people knew that. I wish, particularly Christians, obviously understood that, but they don't. And I remember reading through the scriptures myself when I was, you know, locked up, incarcerated. I was just combing the scriptures looking for answers, and I'd ask an answer, and it might take a day, it might take 2 weeks, but the Lord was answering me because I was just seeking. But I remember reading the scriptures, and you know, in the Old Testament they had the temple, right? And the temple, right? They had the outer court.
Yeah.
And then they had the holy place, and then they had the most holy place.
Yeah.
And the most holy place is
the
where the
holiest of
high
holies,
priest
yeah.
would go, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the Ark of the Covenant was,
Yeah.
and that's where, like, you mess around, you walk in there, and you're not authorized, and you drop dead.
You'll die.
Right.
You would die if you walked in there. You had
Right.
to. If I remember, you know scripture a lot better than I do. Not, you know, just, but to add to what you're saying, I think they had to sacrifice a lamb before they went in.
Yeah, they had to sprinkle it with blood. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was this whole ordeal that they had to do. But my point is that I had such a crazy, like, I was mind blown when I understood that in the New Testament, your body becomes this temple, this most holy place. The blood that is sprinkled among the temple to cleanse you and to make this place holy so that communion between you and God can occur is the blood of Jesus Christ, the Lamb of God. You know, and it's crazy because we take that so lightly, man. And Hebrews says it. It says, for if you sin willfully after you receive the knowledge of truth, there no longer remains a remission of sin, but a certain expectation of fiery judgment.
Yeah.
It says, for if in the law of Moses they were killed on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, how much more those who trample the Son of God underfoot and count the blood by which they were saved a common thing? And I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, man, bro, that's insane. So my point is that we're living this lifestyle, and a lot of times we don't understand that.
Yeah.
We don't understand, you know, and we're asking questions, man, why aren't I experiencing breakthrough? Why isn't my marriage working? Why isn't my job? Why can I get this? Why am I so confused? What is my destiny? What is my purpose? And they don't understand that there's this barrier in their life, this choice that needs to be made that will change everything. And a lot of times that barrier, somehow it's sin associated. It may not, and I heard somebody say this, and it was another mind-blowing, and it was real quick. He says sin is a wound that attracts demonic activity, and it might be something you've done or something that has been done to you.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, bro, you know, and so sometimes it may be unforgiveness. It may be this resentment or this bitterness or this hurt or this distrust that a person has because of their dad or because of their mom, but now it's become a barrier between them and God because they didn't have a father figure that they trusted. They don't trust God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so my point is that when you make that decision, you get that out of the way and you allow the Lord to cleanse that. Cleanse that by his blood. You ask forgiveness, you repent, whatever, and boom, he cleanses you. So now you're completely, and there's nothing in your way that's separating you from God, nothing that you willfully, knowledgeably know of, right? Then you can be cleansed by the blood, and communion can occur between you and God. And through that communion of the Holy Spirit, the power of God can now come, and then it's like, man, let's go.
And manifest in you.
Manifest in you.
Yeah. You know, let's take it back even, you know, to interject, let's take it back just a small amount, right? It could just start with your attitude. A lot of people don't realize that what's holding them back their entire life is their attitude, their outlook on X, Y, Z. You know, I this was recent too. This was recent, but you know, I'm watching a sermon amazing, amazing. This was like the best part of it for me. But you know, David and Saul, you know, they were like best friends, if you will. You know, like I mean, they were tight. You know, they were like bros. You know, and when they went out, you know, at war, and I exactly don't remember exactly what war it was, but they came back, and then and I'm sharing something that was already shared, by the way, but this is my interpretation of it and how I received it. When they came back, and they told Saul that he killed thousands, and then they told David he killed tens of thousands. You remember what happened right after that?
Yeah, he was mad.
He was mad.
He wanted to kill David.
He hated him. Well, I mean, maybe hate's the wrong word to use here, but he despised him so badly that he watched basically says he watched every step that he made because he became jealous of this guy. But you know where it all started? It started with his attitude. And that attitude was a doorway that opened up for jealousy, for greed and hate and envy, you know, and he became very bitter from it. But it all started at the very beginning. It had nothing to do with David. It had to do with his attitude.
And you know, I think it's safe to say that was probably Saul's biggest problem, is he placed so much weight and importance on the opinions of men. Yeah. And when he heard, it was the women, they were singing a song. It was in the form of a song.
All of the women, you're right, came out to sing to them because of their winning.
And when he heard that, he became very jealous because of their opinion of David was higher, right? That's how he perceived was higher than him. And you see, that's why the kingdom got ripped for him. Mm-hmm. Because Samuel was showing up late before they were going to go into battle in that war. And he became concerned with what the people might be thinking, and he killed the sacrifice ahead of time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so.
But I mean, like I'm saying, it all goes back to your attitude. You know, you have a poor attitude and an outlook on life, and I think that, I mean, not to get too far deep into the subject of that's where the society or that's where this, you know, culture has gone. You know, with being woke, right, and this cancel culture. You know, and it's like, how do we get there? Well, it all started with our attitude. And let me tell you where this attitude came from. And the root cause here for me, and I'll tell you right now what I think. The root cause of that attitude came from, hey, I had this kind of life. That's why I'm this way. No. At any given moment, you can change your life. Just because you had a bad, you know, hand dealt to you, doesn't mean that that's the only hand you're going to hold your entire life. You can reshuffle your deck. You know, you can have had a bad day or maybe a bad life or maybe a bad upbringing, or maybe you had a bad job. Maybe you had a bad relationship. You know, somebody told me years ago that they were dead inside because their ex-partner had left them that way. I just thought to myself, you know how much power you just gave to that person?
Yeah.
And they don't even care that you gave them that power. They're going and living their best life. And the only one that it has affected is you, because of your attitude on it. And now because your attitude is this, your outlook on life is this.
Right.
And because your outlook on life is this, that's what you're going to receive.
You're right.
And that's exactly what I'm trying to get is to give you an example of why we're where we're at. Sometimes I'm just like, you know, my boys, they had, you know, in their early life, right? Well, that's not fair. I don't know if you ever heard that, right? Kids love that, right?
Yes, bro. Especially as a coach, I'm assistant for all the coaches. That's all you hear, bro.
That's not fair. Life's not fair, you know. So instead of, okay, mijo, come here, you're right. Let me comb your hair and give you a hug and tell you you're right. No, I don't tell that to my boys. Life's not fair. Get used to it. Life wasn't fair to me either, and life wasn't fair to a lot of people. Take that out of your vocabulary. It's not fair.
Yeah.
You make it what you want. You know, what you put into it might not be exactly everything you got out of it, but your fulfillment should come from all of the effort that you put into it. But what ends up happening with this generation is we have this iPhone here, and we have the internet, and we want it like this.
Yeah.
But we forget about the gestation period. The day that you plant the seed is not the day that you eat the fruit. It's not the day that you collect your harvest. But everybody wants, oh, you know what? I went to one practice. I want to be amazing at what I do. Oh, I went to one teaching, I'm going to be amazing at what I do.
Right.
No, you forgot that just like it takes a mother 9 months to be pregnant and go through all of the birth pains and go through everything she had to go through before she gives birth to that child, she had to go through that gestation period. This is elementary, but we've changed that culture. We've changed what society thinks about things. We just want it instantly. Oh, you know what? We didn't get it instantly. Let's just drop it and put it away and let's not do it again.
Yeah.
Whoa. Did you just see what you did to your talent? Did you just see what you did to your potential? All because of your attitude that left you on that outlook on life. And now as a result, this is what you're getting.
Yeah. And it's like two totally opposite responses to the trials, tragedies, adversities, struggles, sufferings of life. And one response is like you blame everything and everybody, and the other response is you accept it. Like I like that. There's a video by Jordan Peterson. I send it to a lot of my friends. The title of the video is "Transcend Your Suffering," right? But he says, man, and I'll try to.
By the way, I've read this book twice, and that's because of you. His 12.
Rules for Life.
12 Rules for Life.
Yeah.
I just bought his the one that follows after it. It's on my counter. I just bought it. It's black.
Beyond Order.
Beyond Order.
Yeah, Beyond Order.
Yeah, I haven't read it. I'm reading. I just started Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yeah.
They started off really, really good with this whole accident that he had in life. I haven't finished the book. I just barely started it. But
yeah.
Those are my 2 books right now. So. Because of you, I took you up on that. Jordan Peterson just mind blows me everything that he says and does and how he puts it out there. And he has the same outlook that, hey, you know what? This happened to you? Okay. And I'm trying to break it down because his words are very, very complex.
Yeah.
And, in a nutshell, it's like, hey, this happened to you? Okay. That happened to you? This is what you can do about it. And if you don't do this about it, then that'll continue happening to you. That's what his core is. Because he doesn't believe in this victimized mentality.
And then not only that, he says, and not only, what did you say? It will continue?
Yeah, like if you're doing, X, Y, Z, right? And you continue doing that, but you want a different outlook, if you want a different result, well, you're not going to get it because you're continuing to do X, Y, Z. You have this victimized mentality. Well, you're going to stay as a victim the whole time if you don't change your outlook and, what you put into it. You're always gonna revert back to, dang, I'm the victim here. Dang, I'm the victim here.
And not only that, so in the video clip that I'm telling you about, he says, not only does it continue, he says, but everything that you're complaining about, you make it exponentially worse to no end. And he says, and there's this concept that hell's a bottomless pit, and that's because no matter how bad things are, and he says like stupid SOB. That's what he says in the actual clip. But he says some stupid SOB could come along and make it a whole lot worse.
Yeah.
And man, it's so true, bro. And talking about baseball games and stuff like that, I just came out of these seasons with my kids, bro. And it's like when you start blaming the ref, he called it too low. It's like you, by default, you subsequently blind yourself to what you're doing wrong.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with being observant.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with seeing that somebody called a play wrong. I don't want to sound like, I'm just on the side of, my actions only, that's all I have control over. Because that is true, right? It's a 90-10, right? It's 90% of how we respond and 10% of what happens to us in life. And I truly believe that, But to what you're saying, there's nothing wrong with recognizing that a coach or that, a ref, called or did something wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. Alternatively, it's the blame that we place on them, And just to say what you're saying, I'll give you a great example because it's my boys, right? I use my boys as examples, and man, they're amazing. They play. All 3 of them play football, just fantastic at what they do, right? And they're just getting better, And I tell them. Or they've said, well, if it wasn't like this, then we would have won the game. You can't live in that what if. That what if world doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It never happened for a reason. You lost that game because we lost that game. Whatever the case might have been. Well, if the ref wouldn't have called that play, we would have won the game. That's why it's sports. That's why we're human. We're all, flawed to a default, right? We're not perfect at it. And that comes within recognizing that within yourself, like, well, you know what? I'm not the perfect player. I made mistakes too. was I maybe the one that cost us a game?
Yeah.
And now we got to look inward.
And that's the important thing. And I think there should be priority of blame. So when you're starting to look like what went wrong or where blame should be attributed, I think you should look at yourself first, analyze that, and then once you got that together, okay, I could have swung more. There was some questionable calls. It was a little bit outside beyond the plate, perhaps. Maybe it was right at my knees. Why didn't I swing at that? It's not like it's unhittable if it's 2 inches below the strike zone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like it's hittable, So it's like, what man, I'm not aggressive enough. I haven't practiced near me. And then after you look at yourself, then it's like, yeah, well, the ref could have. And man, I think when you do that and you develop a habit of doing that, you come to find out that you are 90% to blame, bro. Yeah, the 10% that was the ref, and the 10% was this, and 10% was that. But man, bro, you can make a huge difference in your life. So much so that even if the ref calls all these bad calls, man, it's like you still win. And that's what you see. There's this, Jordan Peterson talks about this too. It's a concept that I think it's in the sciences, or I don't know where, but apparently it's a social fact. It's pretty much a statistical fact, and it's called Pareto distribution. You heard about that?
No.
So it's basically the concept in that every area of human activity, whether it's sports, work, business, finance, economy, whatever, 80% of the production in that area comes for 20% of the humans or the individuals in that particular field. And out of those 20% of those humans that are producing that 80%, 50% or half of it comes from like one or two. So to give you an example of that in the realm of sports, we're talking about the Michael Jordans, right? You have this team of all-star athletes, and how many of the points come? About more than half or more come from Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Wayne Gretzky's, you know what I mean? And that's because they're the best of the best.
Yeah.
And that's in business, that's in everything, You talk about, I could give 10 people $1 million, and this is an economic thing I heard from an economist one time. He says, if you were to distribute the wealth of the world amongst the population of the world, he says the rich would be rich and the poor would be poor again within 6 months to a year. And that goes all back to mindset, placing the blame, things like that, bro. It goes a lot to, and it's funny because, we're talking about, you can look at this scientifically, statistically, and you can look at it biblically, right? But if you're going to look at it biblically, ask them at all, like you see the Cain and Abel mentality.
Oh, yeah.
Different, right? And sometimes I meditate on that, and I'm like, man, they just came out of the garden, and both of them were hearing the stories their parents were telling, and their parents were telling them, man, we had it perfect, we did this and that, and we messed up. And I feel like Cain now is experiencing all this suffering. Why do we got to till the ground, Dad? And why are we right? He was a farmer. He tilled the ground, the sweat of his brow. He was enduring all this suffering, the suffering of life.
Well, he took it as suffering.
Right.
That's what's important.
Right. And so his response to it was resentment of the situation, bitterness towards God, etc. And it seems like the opposite response of Abel was more of an acceptance, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you do is like they're both posited with the same situation, and they're two different responses. And Abel's response is like, you know what, I'm going to accept it, and then when I accept it, I'm going to ask help from God. And it's like when you do that, it's almost like you become enlisted in his army, because now you become an ambassador for good, an ambassador for help. You become stronger, bro. And that's what Jordan Peterson says. Be the man at your funeral that people can turn to.
And I think when you get rid of that dogma, so I think there's like several parts to it, right? Several parts to the growth of life, and how we see these things, right? And how we parent and raise our kids, right? And every single one of them is different. Trust me. We got 5 together, so there's not one that's the same, And when you get rid of that dogma of the attitude, being victimized, feeling like life is not fair, right? When you get rid of that, what you end up doing is you peel the layers back of that fruit. And now it went from a hard outer core, right, to something that is tender. And now what you can do is you can nourish that. I'll give you a great example, right? Our oldest son, his name is Cash. We've put that in him, right? We put that in him. Amazing kid, smart, everything, right? Great, just great guy. Now he's in sports, and he's been in sports. He plays quarterback. Really good as quarterback. And he's in practice this year, and he starts to notice that there's also other quarterbacks that are pretty good, right? So he tells me, Dad, I'm thinking about playing corner. I'm thinking about playing safety. I said, why would you want to do that? He said, because I just want to do it, So talk to his coach, right? Give his coach a call, and his coach tells me, the thing about corner and safety is they know what the quarterback is doing. So when they play that position, they know what to do. He goes, and your son's fast. My son's tall. My son's taller than me. He's probably right at 6 feet or right under 6 feet tall. He goes, he's ninth grade, He's pretty big guy, and he's pretty fast. He goes, so he wants to play those positions, one, because he's fast, two, because he knows what the quarterback's going to do. He goes, so he kind of has it all going for him. I said, okay. So I talked to Cash. We go over a few things, right? So this is what I did. I said, you know what? And he's not in the victimized mentality, right? He's just like, Dad, these guys are better than me, And I said, okay. So we got him a private coach. Got him a private quarterback coach, right? This is his. We're going on his third week. Week before last, this last week, and now he'll go to 2 this week with this quarterback coach who's doing really well. His name is Zach. He's great, by the way. If anybody needs something like that. So
Zach what?
Gomez.
Zach Gomez.
He's from Mercedes. And he was their quarterback, I believe.
Does he have like a business, or is just you got to look up Zach Gomez?
Just look up Zach Gomez. You
Okay.
see all the videos and you see everything. Just fantastic.
Zach Gomez.
Yeah. And we start taking him, right? And it's amazing. It's amazing when that victimizement. I'm going back to. I'm getting somewhere with this. So just bear with me. It's amazing when you take away that victimized mentality and it's put away, and that dogma doesn't exist in you, and then you have that exposed, nourished fruit. That you can. It's good, right? And you take that, and in his case, now he needed help with mechanics. He needed help with his elbow being a certain way. He needed all of these things, right? And all this kind of one-on-one practice. And now his confidence level, you can see it. Now he's practicing. He at a Memorial or McAuliffe in over here in McAllen. We're going today. He's practicing with one of the quarterbacks on there. I believe is All-American All-American. I think that's what they call it. I don't know football a whole lot. And there's some other really good varsity quarterbacks there. So now, what is happening to Cash's mindset? One, he's surrounding himself with other quarterbacks that are also really good at what they do, that are sharpening their sword. Just because you're good doesn't mean you don't have to sharpen your sword or train, right? It's kind of that saying, if I gave you 4 hours to chop down a tree, what you spend your first 3 hours doing? Sharpening my blade. It's the same thing. It's the same concept, right? And so now this guy's confidence has risen. One, I'm surrounding myself with guys who are great at what they do but are also trained. So I want to do the same. One, his confidence has grown. Two, he's gotten much sharper with throwing. And he's just going to continue getting better. He wants to play college ball on D1 level. And I said, you can do it. You can do it, but you're not going to do it if you do what everybody else is doing, which is just going to practice at school, and then the season's over, and then that's it. The 1% of kids have the talent, and it's like playing guitar. 1% of the human population that plays guitar, and this is a fact, and you can probably look it up, and I'm pretty close on this stat, but 1% of people can listen to a song and play the song without actually looking at a piece of music to see what chord progressions that they were doing, and get it immediately. 1% of people are talented like that in the whole world that play music. Playing music, you have to sit there and you have to learn it before you're gonna get it right. I can't tell you I've ever met somebody like that. I've seen them on YouTube. I've never met someone like that. And so where I'm going with that is now you see him growing, and it's like, well, you want to play D1 school? Well, now you're not doing what everybody else is doing. Their season ended. I said, you're gonna start 10th grade, and your coach is gonna say, you got exponentially better than the other quarterbacks that weren't doing this. How did this happen? Well, it didn't happen by sitting on your couch eating Doritos, playing. He likes to play Madden, right? But not much. Playing Madden, you didn't learn much like that. But that's what happens too. To a side subject, we see something, we play something, and now we think we're experts. No, just because you see and think you know how to do something, doesn't mean you know how to do it. I know you were at my store when I used that example, and I challenge you know if you're watching, get a pen and a paper, right? Get a pen and a paper. You remember this? You remember this or no?
No.
Get a pen and paper. I want you to write your name. Just, you know, Trey, right?
Okay.
Okay, now right under it, I want you to take your left hand and I want you to write your name. It's a great activity, by the way. I've done it with the boys. I've done it with, you know, folks at work. You see how the way you wrote it with your right hand, it looks so much better than with your left hand. But you know how to write your name, right? But just because you know how to do something doesn't mean you know how to do it. That's what I try to share with him and a lot of people, you know? And so now, going back to that, now that he's doing it, he's putting it in motion, he's working on his mechanics, elbow placement, hip placement, leg placement. There's a lot to football as being a quarterback. Stuff I didn't even know about. And I didn't even play football.
Micro details.
Micro details. I mean, even where this hand is, like, you know, you're throwing the ball, you know, this hand has to be like, you know, if your hand's too high, that's probably where the ball, I mean, like all of these little details, very interesting too. Just watching and, you know, he's sharing all this information. I'm like, wow, like, and I talked to him and he says, you know, most high school coaches, you know, they really don't show you the mechanics of it. In my head, I'm thinking, well, Cash has the speed, you know, Cash has the physique for it. You know, he has good arm strength. He has the fundamentals to be a great quarterback, but what was missing for him was those minor details in the mechanics. I think a lot of times that we forget that as parents, you know, growing up, as raising kids, is that your kid has all the fundamentals to do X, Y, and Z, right? What they need is maybe a little training, maybe a sit-down talk, maybe some coaching from someone else. Depends on what they're trying to do, right? Mm. Just so they can go to that next level and not drop that dream, not drop that, you know, man, you know, I have aspirations of, you know, playing on a D1 level, just to continue using him as an example, you know, playing on a D1 level. I said, man, shoot for it. You know, it's possible that you can play on a D1 level. You know, we also got him registered with a college recruiting online thing where we post videos of him and stuff, you know, so, right, fundamentals, training on the mechanics of it, and then exposure. Try to get him out there so that way people can see, other coaches can see that he, you know, has done all of this with, you know, with his school, you know, playing football. And now you have like this guy who thought he wouldn't play on a college level. Now he's being, you know, recruited and seen by, I don't know, who's a D1 school? LSU? That's a D1 school, right?
Yeah, LSU, UT, TCU. Those are a lot of the ones in Texas.
Yeah.
A&M.
Yeah, so those are all D1 schools. But
Baylor.
Going back to that, it all starts with our attitude. You get that victimized dogma out of your system, your ability of being able to accomplish more is going to go from like this window to like this window.
Yeah.
A lot of people just don't realize that. It just starts with your attitude. It's the most minute thing that you can do is have a good attitude on life and in anything.
Perspective.
It's perspective.
Attitude, perspective, they go like hand in hand.
The power of perspective, like, I gave this example, you know, who was it? It was recently. You know, I was talking to someone at work, and he said, hey, you know, I always like to ask, you know, we work together, you know, he said, you know, I asked him, you know, hey, how you doing? Oh, man, I'm not doing too good. Today's a bad day. Just like that. Like, we just threw the day away. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. What you mean it's a bad day? The day just started 3 hours ago at the earliest if you woke up at 6.
Yeah.
Like, how did the day go bad in 3 hours? You still got, you know, 20 plus hours to go, 21 hours to go. And how did it become bad so quick, you know? In my head, I'm thinking that. Obviously, I didn't share that, right? But I'm just like, you know what? 2 things can happen here. I can either accept that he said I had a bad day, and I can let his outlook and his perspective on his day continue to go like that, because that's what he's perceiving, right? But the thoughts in his head are incubated, and what he's speaking is he's giving birth to that bad day. So in my head, I'm thinking, you know what? I'm gonna attempt to change his ideology right now. I let him ask me, how's your day going? Right? Because that's what we do as humans. We say hello, you say hello back. I ask you how your day is going, you're going to say, how's your day going? Right? That's the way we are as humans.
Yeah.
It's natural. So I waited. It's just a few seconds, right? It happened. And how's your day going, Josh? It's going amazing. It's going awesome. My day wasn't going awesome. You know, I mean, it was, but like it wasn't going to, you know, I didn't win a cruise, you know, or I didn't win a vacation, or I mean.
They gave you an extra coffee at Starbucks. Hey,
Exactly,
you want
know?
this?
I didn't have something.
Wasn't one of those.
I didn't have nothing extraordinary happen in my day for me to say it was amazing and it was awesome. But that's
All the lights turned green on the way to work.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's like more like I got all the red ones, you know, and somebody cut me off, and you know, just. But anyways, you know, I said, man, it's going amazing. It's going awesome. And he says, really? And I says, yeah. He goes, if you don't mind me asking you, why is it going amazing and awesome for you today? I says, because there are people within 100 miles that I live with that wish they had my problems, that wish that they walked in my shoes, that wish that they had the home I live in, that wish that they had a shirt off their back, that wish that they had gas for their car, that wish that they had feet to get off of their bed, to plant on the ground, to stand up. There are people that wish they had your life. And if you can't see that, and if you can't understand that you have an amazing life by just being able to walk and breathe, and have a roof over your head, and gas to make it to work, and that nice shirt you're wearing, he was wearing a nice shirt that was ironed, then if you can't see that, every day is going to be a bad day. But if you start seeing it, and you start looking at those things, and you start your day with that, then guess what? Your day is going to be pretty amazing and pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Every single day. Because even the guy who cut, it's like I told him, even the guy who cut you off in traffic, somebody wished they had a car to drive.
Yeah.
Just to be cut off by traffic.
Yeah, that's like the power of gratitude, man.
Yeah.
You know, those things, they have to be practiced, because when you're human, right? We all have the human experience. I call it the human experience. We all feel the same emotions. We have our ebbs and flows, our ups and downs, our good days and our bad days. And the bad days are just defined as when, you know, more coincidental, random things of life happen to you than on any usual day, right? It seems like they all happen consecutively, and that's your bad day, right? And so you're going through those things, and your automatic response is those emotions.
Yeah.
Why me? You feel bad, you start getting mad and stuff like that. You start blaming it on people and this and that, you know. And so you have to like create almost disciplines and habits of reminding yourself, and then find things to be grateful for. And you make that a practice, and that you're able to kind of quickly like lift you up out of that state, or whether it's depressed or however you feel, cause anxiety or stress or whatever, you know, you're able to do that. And that's, man,
A quick little hack, and this is great. I read this some time back, and I think, you know, to give credit, Les Brown, early on motivational speaker that I listen to. Like, I love Les Brown. I know he's so old school. He's so old school, and he takes it to the very finest of elementary that you can think of.
And he speaks so passionately, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't even speak English and you just listen to this guy, you'd feel great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, wow. Like,
just his tone, right?
Yeah.
You've got to be hungry.
Yes, it's so good, you know? Even when he talks about his ups and his downs, and when he went broke and how he lost his house, and, you know, I mean, just everything he talks about. But I read, you know, something that he wrote, and it's amazing. It's a long time ago, too. He says, and there's probably a video on it, too, of him out there sharing this. He says, when you wake up in the morning, you operate on a hertz, your brain frequency, right? Your brain frequency operates between, you know, 10 and 15 hertz, right? He goes, those are the first 15, 20 minutes of your day. During that 15, 20 minutes, those hertz that you're operating on, your brain frequency, is the most susceptible to whatever you put into your head. If you read the news as soon as you wake up, and it's bad news, your day's gonna start off pretty bad, because your brain is in a creative state of form where it wants to learn more information. And what you read and what you put into yourself those first 15, 20 minutes of your day pretty much sets the tone of your attitude throughout the day. Because by the time you get your day going, you're operating in meta. You know,
I've heard of that, right? Like alpha, beta,
Yes.
delta waves,
yeah.
brain
so,
waves.
So it's beta, right? That's what you or alpha. I'm sorry. You're in the alpha when you wake up. That's when, if you read or watch something positive, and I challenge anybody, first 15, 20 minutes of your day, wake up, watch or read something positive. Don't read the news. Don't get on social media. Don't get on Instagram. Don't get on Facebook. It's all those places. They generally don't deliver great news or great information.
Right.
So open up a podcast. I'll even give you a better one. I'll give you a better one. Let's take it even further down to like bare bones. Make a list in your notes in your iPhone of 10 things you're grateful for. Could be a pair of shoes. Could be you're grateful because you have running water. There's so many things you can write down on this list, right? Like, I'm grateful that there's aircon in this building right now that we're talking, right? Like, so just make a list of 10 things that you're grateful for. Call it the grateful list, or call it your morning list. And as soon as you wake up, carefully read one by one all of those things. Maybe you want to add to it every day, add to it. Make the list grow. But you're going to see that because you've done that, your attitude and the little things that bother you throughout the day, people, traffic, maybe our health, right? All of these things that upset you or maybe kind of get under your skin will stop getting under your skin. And your attitude and your outlook on life is going to be like, I'm so much grateful. I'm so grateful for so many other things. I don't got to waste 5 seconds of energy on that. I'm feeling upset about it.
Yeah.
You realize some people, here's the thing, some people mistaken that for patience. It's not patience. When you get upset about somebody being a certain way, or you get bothered by traffic, or you get bothered by your food not coming out the right way, none of that's patience. All of that's tolerance. And where do you get that tolerance from? Because, who likes being cut off in traffic? I sure don't. But that doesn't go to say that my tolerance level is, so low that I'm going to let it get under my skin and affect my attitude.
Yeah.
No, my tolerance is so high to it because there's so much more to be grateful for. So my attitude is like, I choose to go this way and not this way. And somebody at work asked me one time, is it tough to keep a good attitude? Like, what if something bad happens to you? What if somebody really upsets you, like really, really, really bad? Like, what's your response? They asked me. This was some time ago, actually. I said, I'll use your pen as an example. When you're running a sprint, and I think I did like one off season of tracks. I don't know a whole lot of the details on it. When you're running a sprint, 200, meter?
Well, they got the 100 meter.
Okay.
I would say that's the most popular sprint.
Yeah. So let's just use the 100 meter, right? When you're running a sprint of 100 meters, you have a baton.
Right? Or you're talking about a relay.
Relay.
200 meter relay.
Yeah, the 200 meter relay. And you have a baton, and you're running that relay, and when you get to the person who's in front of you, what do? You give them the baton. Right? Then they take it, then they run. I use the baton as a great example, right? When somebody upsets you to the point where you have no control over your own emotions and you let it cloud all of your judgment, you just gave them that baton. Now that person has power over you. Why would I want to let anybody have power over me? Only one upstairs,
Yeah.
As the best example I could give as far as how to build that tolerance. Start your morning with being grateful for something. Start a morning routine. And it doesn't even have to be at 5 a.m. That's normally, I wake up, 5 a.m. if I'm gonna do CrossFit in the morning. If not, it's, sometimes a little bit after that, But the routine doesn't change. It doesn't matter what time I wake up. It could even be Sunday when, everybody's kind of asleep, a little bit later.
Yeah.
We still keep that routine of waking up. And I usually like to read something, from Jordan Peterson or something from Les Brown or something from T.D. Jakes, or even Stephen Furtick, Even if you don't watch the whole thing, just start your day and your morning.
I think for me, it's like understanding, and when bad things happen to me, first of all, I understand that bad things equally happen to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my response to it, and I remind myself who I am and what my purpose is, right? And like I said, my response to it is that I believe I'm a child of God. I'm enlisted in His army, and I need to be an ambassador for good and for faith. And if I let it plant this seed of bitterness in me and grow. You know, I think of it like metaphorically, like, you know, venom, how like that like stickiness like gets on somebody, right? It got on Spider-Man. I don't know if it's like part 2 or 3 or which one, right? But a little bit got on Spider-Man. He started to be mean. Remember that? There's that scene where he's
symbiotes.
Yeah. And you know, it sticks to you. I kind of feel like how that bitterness is, man. It sticks to you, and then it saturates every aspect of your life. The way you speak to your kids, the way you speak to your wife, the way you speak to people, and then before you know it, you've not. And I think that's why Jesus and certain, you know, kind of thinking about religion, but I think that's why he called some people that he would encounter, he would say, no, your father's the devil, right? And he's speaking of a spiritual type of DNA, and if you're not careful, man, that stuff will stick to you, and then you'll kind of have,
it grows.
You have to examine yourself, and you're like, man, what side am I on right now? And you know, and that's one thing that I encountered in prison, man. Prison was a big revelation for me, but one thing I encountered was I came to this revelation that, bro, I'm not evil, bro. Yeah. Like, I've done bad things, for sure, right? Without a doubt, I've done bad things. But when you see certain situations where people start, because you see it coming out here, but you don't see it culminate to its fullest extent like you do in prison, right? You hear people, F you, they get into these verbal arguments. But in prison, there's no one stopping you. Yeah. So the verbal argument escalates, and then it becomes a physical fight. And then out here, you see people fight physically too, but people break it up. And in prison, people don't break it up.
They encourage you.
So you see people get beaten to a pulp. You see people, some situations die. I never saw anybody die, but it happened around me, in dorms around me. People were falling off the 2nd floor staircase. People were banging their heads in within the showers of the walls. You know what I mean? People were getting stabbed. People were, you know what I mean? Yeah. And you see it taken to its fullest extent, and you're like, man, is that the side you want to be on?
Yeah.
So where do you stop that? Well, you stop it at the verbal altercation. You know what I mean?
Comes out.
You know what I mean? Hey, man, F you. That's cool, bro. Yeah, man. My bad, man. I don't want no problems, man. I'm out. No.
Take the high road.
Bless you. You know what I mean? Now, if your life is on the line and they're actually now beating you, you got to know where that's different, of course, right? And that level of discernment comes in and stuff. Yeah, you know. But I guess people don't think about that, but, you know, they should. You ever have that moment of reflection or self-examination? Ask yourself, man, what team you want to be on? You want to be part of the problem or part of the solution? You know what I mean? Because someone cuts you off and you get that, man, this dude cut me off, and you go and you do it to the next man, and now that's your method of driving because you feel like every driver is against you and they're trying to get you, and you know what I mean? And I can't let myself because, you know, people are going to get over on me and I can't, you know what I mean? Well, then now you become that bully to the next person, whether it's on traffic or at work or in your relationship. You become a bully to yourself.
You become the very thing that you dislike.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what Jordan Peterson says. You make everything that you're complaining about exponentially worse. Yeah. And hell has now just enlarged itself because of you.
And it all started with the manifestation of something so simple and small.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's tough to really understand and grasp that, because in those given moments, we don't ask ourselves, is it worth getting mad, getting upset, getting frustrated, losing my patience, losing my cool? And it doesn't mean that I don't. It doesn't mean that you don't. I'm sure that we're human. You know, there's, you know, a rock in my shoe could really get under my skin. Like, I'm not lying to you. Like, that would really bother me when I stand all day. You know, my office is a stand. I had a rock in my sock. It would take a lot for me to keep a great attitude if it was there forever.
Pretty soon you're cursing the rock out. You see those Satan.
Yeah, you know, so I mean, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have those moments. You know, those moments of, you know, where things, I like to say, things get under your skin. Right? That's the easiest way to say it. But what it does mean is that when those things happen, try to ask yourself, is this worth what I'm thinking or what I'm doing? Is it worth it taking my peace away? Is it worth cussing at this guy or going or you know, flooring my car and wasting gas just to go and flip him off? What did that do for you? I did nothing for you. And that didn't do anything for the guy either, you know, probably, unless, you know, the guy also has the same kind of road rage. And now what's going to happen? Now, you know, there's going to be a fight, like you said, right? You know, and sometimes, why do we want that? Why do we need that? You know, we don't. You know, and it kind of goes back to just, if you have a great attitude on life, you know, and you grow from that, you know, you're grateful for things, then all the little other things aren't really going to matter in your life. You're going to be looking at the big picture, you know, because we're doing this, you know, we're looking at a microscope of things. Okay, you know, this guy cut me off, you know, I was late to work because of it, you know, Now my boss is pissed off at me. Now we're looking at all of these like little negative things, and it's affecting our outlook on life. Whereas if we just looked up and we looked at the sky and we say, wow, this earth is big, there's so many more things to be grateful for, your whole attitude, perspective.
Bro, that's a good analogy. It's like, imagine if you tried to water a plant by smashing an H2O molecule into the root, like at the molecular level, like,
exactly.
Why is this? Oh, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Finding and grasping an H2O molecule. Hey, just get some water and water it, man. Just throw it there on the soil, man.
Yeah, we're not trying to learn, how to make, H2O.
Yeah.
We're just trying to water the plant.
Yeah.
And enjoy what comes around it.
Yeah.
That's kind of us in life. Sometimes we're the seed. Sometimes God and Christ and all of these other people around us are the season that we go through. You said something earlier, like, everybody that, every experience, even bad experience that you had in life, I believe they're ordained. Elizabeth Browning, talks about being your in-prison slumber. You had to go through all of those bad things. They were carefully ordained and placed in your life exactly where they were placed, so you could be the person who you are today for Him, to His purpose.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a believer in Christ, all of those bad things that happened to you, or the seasons that you had to go through, they were all ordained.
Yeah.
And you have to really see it like that. And sometimes we're the seed. My dad's in farming, and he's been doing it for like almost seems like 1,000 years. My dad's 63, but he's been doing it since he was like 10 years old. And we planted cotton, right? And he was in a national article. They took photos of his cotton. He didn't even know it. And then they finally were able to reach him and say, hey, we've been trying to reach you. And I guess my dad doesn't answer really unknown calls, right? And who does, right? Trying to contact you about your car's extended warranty. But anyways, my dad answers a call. Hey, we've taken photos of your cotton since it was, right out of the ground, and now it's fairly bigger, and we want to write an article, for you on this, right? Absolutely amazing, right? Now, people around the world are going to read this article, and it's great, right? But to my point was, I was talking with my dad about this cotton, and cotton has to be planted. If you water, which is planting on moisture, if you water your ground and then you let it dry up a little bit, but it's still, the dirt is still moist, right? There's still some water in the soil. You plant over that, right? You want to plant the seed about 1/2 inch deep, and if you plant it too deep, it won't come up. If you plant it too shallow, you're gonna have same or poor yield.
Or like scorches or what?
But the seed has to be a certain depth, and it knows this. The seed knows it has to be a certain depth before it can sprout. But before it can sprout, what happens? What does the seed have to do? The seed has to grow down. Sometimes that's in life, right? We're planted, and it's our time, and it's our season, and it's time for us to grow and flourish. But we don't want to push down into the dirt and into the mud, into the water. We want to just go up, but you got to go down first. And then you finally do come up, and you're like, whoa, now I see the sunlight. Okay, everything's peaches and cream, and then boom, a storm comes. And that could be something in your life, like something bad that you think is bad in your life, But the rain came with it. And now because the rain came with it, you're growing even more. Whereas if it was just sunny all day, you would have no water to nourish your roots to grow. Then you have the birds, and you have disease, and you have all of these other things that nature brings you.
Yeah.
Right? And you can really look at those like, well, that vulture represents,
Or as an alligator, yeah.
This thing in my life, or this person in my life, or this situation in my life. But what did God use the vultures for in the Bible?
Well, they eat the decaying bodies. What do you mean?
They was it the vultures, the ravens? They brought food to
Elijah.
Yeah.
The widow,
Yeah.
the ravens, yeah.
You see, ravens. I'm so sorry. You see, biblical way better than I do.
Yeah.
But the ravens brought him food. So maybe the ravens in your life, you're not understanding or seeing that they're somehow bringing you nourishment that you don't know about.
Yeah.
But we don't see it that way, And so I like to use that. I like to use the farming example because my dad's in it, and he's been doing it forever. And sometimes when it's our time to grow, there's going to be the ravens. There's going to be you having to grow down. There's going to be you having to grow up, and even growing out of the ground. There's a crust, and you have to that little cotton has to push so hard that it knocks over the dried, crusted dirt on itself. And how many of us can really think back on a time when we're trying to grow, but we had that crust right over us that we just couldn't push over?
Yeah, I mean, Jesus, he kind of used that analogy too, right? Unless the seed fall to the ground and die, it cannot bear fruit. And I think there's a
Hey, absolutely right. Yeah, that's a great one too.
And I think there's a similar phrase in the army. I've heard military guys say it. They said everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, bro, that's good.
That's deep.
And then speaking about plants too, I recently heard this. I heard that somebody was trying to like create like some ecosystem and like plant the trees or something. Like the trees, like all the branches were breaking off. And they found that because the trees had no wind resistance, the branches weren't growing strong, the roots weren't going really that deep. And I'm like, man, bro, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's deep. That's why if you also look at the way God created plants, you take palm trees, for example, right? How do palm trees resist such wind? Well, their roots grow deep.
Yeah.
They grow really, really deep.
Yeah.
They're God made them for their roots to go deep, so that way they could endure those strong winds that come. And then you look at other trees that we've brought from other parts of the world, and we put in our backyard because they look beautiful, right? And that's awesome, right? Nothing wrong with doing that. I did that too. But when the storms and the winds and the cold came, guess what happened? They died.
Yeah.
They got uprooted, or they just froze over.
Yeah.
Or we see it all the time when these huge winds and storms come through, all these trees getting uprooted. Well, those trees, they were brought. But the purpose of maybe the palm tree was to be able to endure those, based on the, location of it. And sometimes I think that's also too important is, thinking about placement. Where are you rooted? Are you rooted? Are your roots growing in an environment that is not helping you grow?
Yeah.
Because that happens quite frequently. Right? Who are your friends? Who are you hanging out with?
Yeah.
What are you reading? What are you watching? You turn on the news and you're watching the news. Let me tell you something. The news, its main purpose is to entertain you with bad information. How would that? How is that going to make you a great person?
Yeah.
But this is an example. Anybody can watch the news. I watch the news too, but it's not like my sole focus. But where are you rooted, and how is it helping you grow? And I'll give you the best example of that, man. And I'll use myself. Early 20s, I was rooted. I can tell you right now, there's maybe three to four, maybe 5 friends that I still hang out with today that were from my 20s. I had a lot of friends. But I realized in every one of those situations, I remember I was with a buddy of mine, not to get into detail, but I was with a buddy of mine in my early 20s. And he's like, hey, we're gonna go to my buddy's house. Yeah, okay, cool. Again, we're in party stage. I didn't know we were visiting a drug dealer's house, man. The time I knew it, I had a gun pointed to my head and asking me who I was. And I'll never forget that. I'm like, this is the last time I ever hang out with this person.
Yeah.
I didn't tell myself, nah, this is, I can keep hanging out with this. I can do this again. This is my crowd. No. That's where you take those roots out of those situations and try to root yourself around something different, maybe better people. And the most interesting thing that I found was not even to root myself, even currently what I do right now, with people that do what I do. Because I want to grow. So I try to surround myself with people who do completely different things than from what I do. And I get to learn things about them, and they get to learn things about me, and we have great conversations. And one of my greatest friends, two of my greatest friends, they're truck drivers, for great big companies, and they're great people. but they don't do anything of what I do. So our conversations are never about what I'm already, we'll say, good or decent at. Our conversations are about something completely different.
Yeah.
And now I get to grow in those areas. So that's why I say rooting is important, you know, because if we're not, if we're rooted in the wrong atmosphere environment, in different fashions of our life, then we're never going to be able to grow mentally, physically. I'll give you one super last great example, Matt. This is so cool too. I've been doing what I do for, I don't know, 11 years. I never thought I'd make a career out of it. I've been doing it for 11 years.
Well, since you're talking about to the audience, what do you do?
I work in the automotive business. So, you know, I'm, just I guess in a nutshell, you know, one of the managers. And I've had the pleasure and opportunity to work in almost, you know, every department except, you know, just a few. So it's been such a blessing. You know, when you're somewhat talented at what you do. But anyways, I'll give you a great example. We become complacent, and when we're good at something, right? You go in every day, you go in with a great attitude. This is like on the tail end of growth, I think. You become so good, or you become good at what you do, and you're going on through life, and everything is good. You're good at what you do. Your life's good. You got a good routine. You know, kids are good. Everything's good, right? But are you growing? Or you're just complacent? And you're just going through the motions. So a couple months ago, I felt like I wasn't growing. My purpose is growth and helping others grow and seeing them grow and inspiring them to grow. And now the very core of what I believe I'm not doing. Whoa,
Yeah.
What's going on with me? I'm preaching this, but I'm not practicing growth. I'm complacent. So I end up just, you know, I guess praying about it, you know, in my own way. And just, I didn't even know this is how it was going to come to me. I ended up praying about it, you know, asking God, you know, God, I want to grow. It could be in my career. It could be in my personal life. It could be in different areas of things. But just show me something. I just left it at that. And I revisit the topic as often as I could. Well, I ended up joining CrossFit. You know CrossFit, right?
Yeah.
The cool thing about it was, I didn't research it. I didn't know anybody. Well, not many people who did it. I just knew it was a workout called HIIT, or part of HIIT, right?
Yeah.
That's all I knew.
High intensity interval training.
Yeah. And I had been going to TrueFit. I still had my TrueFit gym membership. I have a little treadmill and, you know, a bike in my garage that I would use almost every day. So I mean, I was fairly fit in my own head, right? Again, this is where we go back to saying that, you know, I wasn't growing, because I had already thought, well, I'm already fit, you know. I'm lean. I eat well. You know, I work out. You know, I'm good, right? And the good thing is, like I said, you know, I didn't really know too many people who did CrossFit. And so I remember it was like a culture shock. I get in there, right? Do the workout. I'm wearing the wrong shoes, first of all. And I wore the wrong shoes for I don't even know how long before. I'm like, oh, these aren't even the right shoes for this. You have to have the right shoes for this too, you know. And I was, you know, hurting myself, and complete culture shock. I'm working out. I'm gassed. I'm sweating like I've never sweat before. I'm gasping for air. I'm hurting. My muscles are sore. I'm like, wow. It brought me back down to earth.
Yeah.
It showed me that I was still very much an amateur at something. And now it gives me an opportunity to grow somewhere. And it just happens to be that. It happens to be growing in fitness and CrossFit, and knowing that, hey, you're an amateur at this. You know, in your career, you know, you might be good. As a dad, you might be good. In areas of your life, you might be good. But at this, you're a complete amateur. This is a whole new world for you. It humbled me, right? In the sense that, wow, like, I could still be an amateur at something. And it felt so good. It felt so good. I still am. You know, every day every time I go to CrossFit, and I try to go quite frequent. You know, I had injured myself, so I took a small break off. You know, about 15 days, but you know, it's 2 weeks ago, and now this week, you know, completely back. But I think to myself, you know, when I hear the coaches tell me, hey, and it's cool for them to be kind of rough on you, you know, like I appreciate that. Hey, you're not doing it the right way. You know, you need to do it this way. And I'm a grown man. I'm a grown man, and here I am, this guy, like, dude, what's wrong with you? You see, I could say that, but I'm like, yes, tell me I'm an amateur at this. Tell me I suck.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Humble me.
Bro, I
know?
love that, bro.
Yeah.
I was just telling my cousin yesterday, like, if somebody tries to motivate me, unless they're like cussing at me and screaming at me, bro, it won't work. Because I know how I am. I'm pretty intense. And if your intensity doesn't surpass my intensity, you're not going to faze me. And it's like, you can almost like, you can tell.
Yeah.
Like when somebody's talking to you, you're like, nah, you're not intense, you know?
Yeah. And then also too, on like the flip side of it was CrossFit was so, or is so mentally challenging also. Not just physically, but mentally. It's mental to continue going when you don't feel like continuing going. Like, it's tough to do 30 burpees and then cycle, and then 30 burpees again, and then cycle and do another, you know, or 24 or whatever it was yesterday. You don't want to do it. You mentally tell yourself, I don't want to do this. But you can still do it, but it's such a mental struggle. So the one thing I really, really love about it, and again, it's fantastic, is that when I start my day, nothing in my day could mentally be worse than from what this does to me. So it creates this mental fortitude. Like, nothing's gonna get into my head that is gonna really mentally bother me, because I've already done something in the morning that really mentally destroyed me. And now I feel so much stronger because of it.
Yeah. That's kind of like what Joe Rogan and them say about the whole cold water dunks or ice baths and stuff like that. Bro, it's like
do it.
It has to be like a general rule of life, bro. It seems like.
Yeah.
When you're constantly pushing yourself to the edge and keeping yourself or putting yourself consciously intentionally putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, it prepares you for when life throws uncomfortable situations at you that you're not prepared for. But it's kind of like you are prepared.
Yeah.
Like you didn't see them come in and you weren't expecting them, but they're here. I'm always in this environment anyways of discomfort. I can handle it. You know, and I'm so grateful that God in my life has put me through a lot of different situations that I didn't choose to be in that were uncomfortable, but he put me through, and I've extracted so much from that situation. And you're exactly right, bro. And it almost makes you wonder, like, if somebody is consistently in this season of comfort, it's like, man, are you really where you're supposed to be? Like, I'm big on purpose and destiny. That's just my right. However anybody takes it, I believe that we have a creator and we were created for a purpose, but I also believe that we have a free will and we can be inside or outside of that purpose depending on where we choose to be. You know, we can reject the call. Our feet cannot be planted where they're supposed to be planted, not positioned where they're supposed to be positioned. But going through those disciplines, and putting yourself in situations of discomfort, it kind of, man, I don't know, it does a lot. But
well, I'll give you the best example I can give, and maybe this, you know, resonates or you know, might apply to a lot of people, right? But and this also goes back to something I read early on in my life. And when I say early, I mean like my 20s, you know. I'm in my mid-30s.
You talk like you're 50. I mean, like, way.
Yeah, like in the 60s, right? But you know, when I say, you know, my early life, right? I say that because I still felt like in my 20s I was very much an adolescent, you know.
Well, they say the male mind doesn't mature till 25.
Exactly. So, I mean, I was in that adolescent stage, right? In my early 20s. And I remember I read something, I still have it, probably screenshot, something I read in a book or a picture. I know I have it in my phone. And I'm gonna tie it back into this, but you know, someone asked me, you know, like, so you know, you had a good life growing up, you know, like you got all your, you know, S together, you know, you got all your stuff together, you know, like you got your career, you got, you know, you're a good dad, By the way, that's probably the only thing I'll say I'm good at. That's why I say I'm decent at my career. I'll only ever say I'm a good dad. I'm a great dad. That's what I will say that, because that's my whole purpose of being alive right now for me is helping them grow 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, for them to get out of the house and fly, and showing them that. That's my purpose right now. But going back to that, they said, "See, you had a good life." Well, I mean, I guess, I really don't think about, the life I had, I said, because you always got a good attitude. You're always, you're good. Like you seem to have quite a bit of understanding, on farm life and this and a little bit about mechanics. And I said, and this is where it ties into. I had a lot of role models growing up, and I want everyone to follow me on this. I had a lot of role models in my life that shaped my future, but a lot of role models that I did not want to become. And I think we miss that, right? In our life. Like you said, everybody that you come and meet in your life has a purpose, whether it's good or bad. But it's a learning experience. So I had some role models in my life that I knew in my head when I grew up, I was not going to be this person. I could have taken the victimized mentality and approach and say, man, because of that person, I'm this person. What would that have done for me? It would have made me bitter and sour just like Saul. And it would have led me to maybe a path that I wouldn't have been on today. But then also, too, on the flip side of it, there were some of those role models that I took pieces from, and I was like, this role model who I don't like other things about, I like this about. And I'm going to take that. And then now, I didn't just look at the person as a whole. I broke that down to where, like, okay, this person has a great work ethic. I'm going to take that. And I'm going to use that in my life. And then, this person, they have peace and a sound attitude and an approach to life. And I'm going to take that. But there was maybe there was other things about that person who I just really didn't, see eye to eye with. Or maybe they were involved in, something that, was bad for other people. I don't know, I don't want to get into detail, about anything like that. But we have all these role models in our life. And I say that they were all great, whether they were good or bad. Mm-hmm. Because I either chose not to be like that role model, or I chose to be that role model. And we have to see everybody in our life like that growing up. You can't say, man, this person came into my life. I wish this person never had come into my life. No, that person had a purpose and a meaning, and it's up to you to find it. Yeah. They crossed paths with you for a particular reason. It was ordained.
That's why it's so important to, if you're a person of faith and you believe that God created you, it's like, what is He? And God.
Yeah.
He created you, and nothing is outside of His sovereign will that happens to you. So in those situations, you ask yourself, God, what are you trying to teach me or tell me in this situation? For the person that doesn't have that faith and doesn't think like that, okay, fine. Let's say you don't believe in God, but maybe even practice it or pretend. Just so you can see what enters into your mind when you pretend. Just pretend you're in a situation and pretend God has you there for a certain purpose, and ask yourself, okay, God, if you are, what are you trying to tell me? And just see what comes into your soul. Yeah. And bro, it's powerful. Yeah. It's powerful. And Jordan Peterson's talking about Jordan back to him, man. He says a lot of people don't pay attention. Mm-hmm. They listen and their ears are open and these words are going in, but they're not paying attention. I feel like that's the perfect phrase for it, because it's almost like you're investing in, you're paying attention. And when you invest in attention, the things that come out, right, the return on that investment is enormous. Yeah. And we're talking about, we have a hard life, right? Or we've had struggles, and right? Or maybe one, more than, I mean, now it's crazy, right? But let's just say somebody who grows in with two good parents and, the American life or whatever, right? That's where we're different. But even
White House on the Hill.
Right. But even those kids, let's say you grow up with a perfect life, two great parents, Christian, took you to, right? those kids still need to pay attention.
Oh yeah.
Those kids still need to ask yourself, God, what are you trying to teach me in these situations? Having those meetings with parents, because you can have the perfect ideal life, and if you're not paying attention, you're not absorbing what God wants you to know.
Yeah.
Then,
and it's coming out of your discomfort. And I use this example, and it's a great example, because I know that it's happened to you, and it's happened to probably everybody. If you drive the same route to work every single day for over 21 days, and I say 21 because psychologically, if you do something for 21 days,
it's a form of habit.
It forms a habit, right? What happens after you form a habit? Well, after you form a habit, it becomes like muscle memory. You don't have to think about doing it, right? So after 21 days of driving the same route, on day 22, or let's just say day 60, if I told you, hey Trey, did you see that new billboard that was up after mile 2 on Texas? You're gonna be like, nah bro, which one? You know why? Because you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
You become complacent.
Bro, they did a study.
Ain't that right?
It is. Well, have you seen the study of the gorilla?
I've seen few, but which one? Hold on.
And for anybody who's listening, YouTube, gorilla study, attention, gorilla study, black suit gorilla. I mean, I don't know exactly what keyword search terms you're gonna have to put in, bro, but they did a study. And in this study, bro, there's like 5 people, and they're all wearing a white shirt, and they're throwing a basketball to one another, right?
Yes.
And
I've seen this video.
Right, so they show this video to different people, and they're like, okay,
amazing.
I guess, I don't remember if there's like 2 different colored shirts or whatever, and they're like, okay, pay attention to like how many times the ball is passed. They ask them some question like that.
Yeah.
Pay attention. So in the video, there's these guys, they're passing the basketball to one another, and then after the video, they ask them, hey, did you see the gorilla?
That's amazing.
Bro, it's hilarious because it's insane, bro.
Yeah.
It's insane, and everybody across the board, everybody is like, "What the heck are you talking about?"
Then they show them the video.
Then they show them the video, and this huge gorilla, it's a man in a gorilla suit, but this huge gorilla walks through the middle of them passing the basketball to one another. You know? And I mean, bro, if that doesn't just summarize how powerful it is when you pay attention and when you actually intentionally look at the things that you're doing wrong or paying attention to your circumstances or whatever, I mean,
even like
what you can miss, man.
Even like, this is like deeper than that. Like maybe you don't feel like you're good at something, right? And like you're like, man, I'm not good at this, right? Like, that's one thing I really hate telling myself. Like, if I don't know carpentry, I'm gonna learn carpentry. If I don't know how to, replace a belt on my vehicle, like I'm gonna go look it up. Right? I'm gonna attempt it, right? And like, can't tell yourself that you're not good at something. You've already those thoughts that were incubated. You've already spoken them into, you've given birth to them. So, anyway, I think it goes even like further. Like, if you think that maybe you're curious, because earlier you said the word curious. Maybe if you think that you're curious about doing something, but because you've become so complacent, you don't pay attention to things, so you're just like, maybe it was a thought in your head and it just came out because you're just so complacent, you're just like, whatever. I don't think I can do it, whatever. Never gonna try. The best example I could give you is, I was the shyest kid growing up, man. Like, I was shy. I was that shy kid that would kind of sometimes hide behind my mom's leg when we were around people. You know what I'm saying? And I wasn't a big kid either. I was super shy. Sometimes when we'd be out there in public, and I remember like when we started going to church with Mercedes Christian Church, I would watch, Roland and Pastor Don, Randy, random people go up and talk, and I was like, oh my gosh, that would terrify me. I could never do that. I'm thinking like, well, what's it like? So I was like curious, right? What's it like? So I could have stayed complacent and not grow and not think about it, but I had to go on stage and play guitar to experience that and close my eyes and know that if there was 1 or there was 50 or there was 100, it really didn't matter. And I had to do that over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, because 25 years down the future, or 23 years down the future, I'd have the ability and opportunity to be able to speak in front of people, no matter how big the crowd was.
Mm-hmm. And it's crazy, bro, because I could so resonate with that. I mean, I was an only child. I had no brothers, no sisters. So a lot of times I was alone, right? When I was after 5, my mom passed away, living with my dad. My dad was, had his alcohol problem, so he'd be in his room drinking. Why was he doing his own thing? And I'd be playing with myself. I had no kids to talk to.
Yeah.
And so when I'd go to school, I remember feeling so weird, bro. I'd say things, they were weird. I have it in my school books where people are like, you're cool, but you're like kind of weird and all that. Like, you write it in my. I feel like when I would talk, I would say stupid things. I would try to be funny.
Yeah.
It wasn't funny to other people because I was just awkward, bro.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of, and now, fast forward to now, I have a podcast and I'm speaking to people, and people have told me multiple times, oh man, as you're calling, you're so good at that, and you speak so eloquently and articulate and all this stuff and this and that and this and the other. And it's like, I can't really take too much, like it's not me, and I wouldn't even say it's because what I aspire to do, to be a good speaker. It's really just purpose. It's God, right? I got to give God the glory. But I guess the way that I became a good speaker is that it came with the deep wanting to know God.
Yeah.
It became a desiring question in my heart, not understanding something, and then I got the answer to something. And then when I got that answer, it's like, man, I want to share this answer with somebody.
Yeah.
And it's something that's so profound and so deep and so important that you have to be able to to garner and get the tools and the skills so that you can give that answer to somebody in a way that they'll understand. And when it becomes something that you got to do, man, it's like, it happens. Like, all the gaps become filled in,
Yeah.
It's like, I got to do it,
I think you said something that was like really, really important. You said, I didn't have the best life. I had, these people as role models. I don't like to say parents, right? Because my parents were role models to me. I mean, like I said, in different fashions, right? There was pieces I took from them, right? And pieces I knew I did not want to take from them, right? Great people. My mom, my dad, both completely different. Great people, just great, right? So they were my role models growing up. I didn't, my dad, it was basically my stepdad, probably till, the majority of my early childhood. And, my dad, kind of came in, sometime between then, and kind of started developing a relationship with him. He was always working, and, he was just not there, right? My stepdad made sure that, he have a relationship with your dad. So did my mom. This is where I say that these were good role models, right? Because they wanted me, they championed that relationship with my dad, even though, he wasn't there a lot of the, early part of my life. That's good. That's okay, and I remember, my dad come around in my life, and I met my dad, in a time in his life when he was still trying to learn how to be a dad. But I always wanted to be around, and my dad was always kind of like my hero. Looked up to him, like, dad could do no wrong, type of thing. And I remember, I remember seeing him in those moments, where he was, tested, and just watching him, think to myself, like, this is why this person, my dad, was placed at this time in my life. So I could learn how to grow from that, And I moved out of my house with my mom and my stepdad. I must have been like 13, 14 years old when I moved out. I had a little red Toyota. Some people remember it. It was extraordinarily loud. And I went to go live with, my dad and my grandma at the time. And my other grandma lived right around the corner. So I kind of, hopped between houses, living with them. And got a job in the summer, at 14. I don't even know if you can work at that age right now in life, but
back then you could.
Yeah,
I remember
I was on their
working at
payroll.
Toys R Us before
I was on their payroll at 14, and helping my dad out a little bit, when I could, on the farm, just doing little things that he needed here and there. I wouldn't say I was like a full-time employee, definitely not, but it was that movement that I had to go and learn, you know what, I'm gonna be alone, you know, or not alone, but I'm gonna move out of my mom's house and go live with my dad. And I learned so much independence there. I learned how to cook for my grandma, and I'm talking about like guisados and some really tortillas and some really, really good food. I learned that from her, you know, and then I would see my dad 7 days a week work, sun up to sundown. A complete machine. Like, I mean, back then, I mean, I can't ever say I saw my dad sick. Maybe I did, but I just didn't pay attention, you know, to him being sick, because I always saw him just 100 miles an hour working. And then I learned from all of that. And I'm like, all right, like, I didn't have this with my mom because my mom was disabled, you know, and well, my stepdad, you know, he would go away to work, so I wouldn't visually see that. But I did see that from my dad, and I did learn from my grandma, and that was super early on in my life. A lot of people would probably say, man, that's a rough life, you know? Or like, I mean, going back to experience that when you're that age and you have to move out and you have to kind of grow up, you know, at that age. Most 14-year-olds, I mean, nowadays are, you know, playing Fortnite, don't know how to cook, you know, or drive. When I started driving probably when I was around 11 years old, you know, super early on in my life, on the farm. But that's where I started learning how to do it. I mean, I can tell you right now that it was all of those, and they were difficult moments. They were, I mean, I wouldn't get into detail on them, but they were difficult moments every single step of the way. And I'm so happy that that was a hand of cards that was dealt to me. I wouldn't go back and change it. I would go back and relive all of that. Would I make different choices? Now that's different. Yes, I would. But I would not go back and change the way I grew up.
Yeah.
And we have to accept that, like you said, because it takes you back to, well, how did you become such a great speaker and talker, and how can you communicate so verbally well, articulated, and have the memory of the words that you extract from the Bible to share with others, to help them grow and inspire them, and to be a bit better person than from who they were before, and not because it was you, but because it was God through you. How did you become all that? Mm-hmm. Well, you said it.
You know, and it's funny, bro, because it's almost like there's so much of an aspect of it that's so big that it's not you. It's just your choice to follow, right? And I'll make it biblical because I feel like this is the best way to say it, the metaphor. But remember when Samuel's mom, she couldn't have kids. Mm-hmm. She had Samuel. She said, God, if you give me a child, I'll dedicate it to you. Yeah. She said, all right, raised him up to a certain age. Took him with Eli, who was the priest. Samuel lived with Eli. Mm-hmm. One day Samuel hears the voice of God, right? And he goes to Eli's room. I think it's Eli. And he said, hey, you calling me? Yeah. No, I'm not calling you. Go back, go to bed. It's not me. Hears the voice again. Samuel. Goes to Eli's room again. Hey, you calling me? No, I'm not calling you. On third time, he says, look, go back and lay down. I'm not calling you. If you hear that again, say, God, here I am. What do you want? Right? Speak. I'm listening. Right? And at the third time, God, here I am. And God spoke and told him, right? And Jesus, I mean, he pretty much told him what he wanted him to do, right? Yeah. The next steps. You see God, he does that with Abraham. Go to a land that I'm going to tell you. God didn't have all the answers. How am I going to do it? How am I going to survive? What am I going to eat? Right? And then Jesus says to that, right? Deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me. He doesn't tell you where you're going. Yeah. What I'm saying is it's a common thing that's so repeated over and over again. And that's kind of what it is, man. And it starts with that perspective. It's like, man, I have a destiny, I have a purpose. What am I going to do? Yeah. Well, kind of listen. Pay attention. Yeah. Where do you feel you are called? Yeah. Man, I feel like I'm called to be here. Man, I'm not good at it. I suck. Probably going to fail. Yeah. If that's where you feel you're called, then go there. Right? There. It's kind of like in motivational speaking, they say just show up. Yeah. Just show up. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just show up. There's a lot in
just showing up.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just show up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And at first you fail. You do it badly. It's all wrong. Like you said, writing with your left hand. And then you do it over and over again, right? Like me in speaking. Man, I just knew that I wanted to know more. God, well, how did I do it? Well, I read a lot of books. Yeah. I listened to a lot of podcasts. I listened to a lot of speakers. And in that time, I wasn't trying to generate these speaking skills. I was not at all. I was showing up for a different purpose because I feel like God was calling me in a relationship. But from that, he invested in me all these skills and all these tools that I look back in retrospect and I'm like, man, I got all these things, but I wasn't there for that. Yeah. I wasn't there for that, man. And I mean, I think that speaks to, generally what we're speaking about is kind of like transcendent purpose. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it goes back to, it's like, I'll use cotton as an example. Like, God gave us the cotton seed, but He didn't tell us how to make the shirt. Right?
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of like that, you know. You if you want to take it down to a like a nature perspective, you know, something that He created, right? Like, and not something spiritual, right? So like for people who have to see something tangible, right? Like, okay, well, He gave us the seed. He didn't tell us how to grow the seed. He didn't tell us how to water it. He didn't tell us that, you know, all of these things were going to happen to it after it came out of the ground, and that, you know, it was going to develop a flower, and from the flower it was going to have a bowl, and from the bowl it was going to bloom, sprout into, you know, what we see as cotton. You know, He didn't tell us that all that was going to happen, and then He didn't tell us that we were going to have to pick the cotton, and it was going to have to go through a process so we could make the clothing off our back.
Right.
He just gave us a seed. It was up to us what we did
What
with
are you going
it.
to do with it?
That's right.
And when you do something, right? Jordan Peterson says this, right? He talks about,
It's elementary.
It's words of the wise. Jordan Peterson repeats this Bible verse, right? And it's the one where he says, "Ask and ye shall receive, knock and the door shall be open to you, seek and ye shall find. For everybody who asks is receiving," all this stuff, right? And he says, he's analyzing it, he's interpreting it. He says a lot of people think of this as it's some type of like spiritual type of thing where it's like, hey, you just ask and it's given to you. He says that's not what this verse is saying at all. It's saying if you're asking or you're seeking and you sincerely want to know the answer, and you reorient yourself and your posture in pursuit of that answer because you seriously want to get it, he says, then you will get the answer.
Yeah.
Right? And it goes along with that other, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these will be added to you. And speaking about cotton, it's like, hey, we have to be proactive, but we're not the ones who send the bees to pollinate it. We're not the ones who send the butterflies. Back in the olden cultures, we couldn't really, like before irrigation and all stuff, we're not the ones who dictate the rain and stuff like that. But the point is position yourself, and then you're aligned to receive, man. So that's good, bro. So I know you wanted to talk about, we kind of hit on those themes, bringing mentors, passions and purposes. Now, let me ask you a quick question on anything, you know, speaking about passions and purposes and stuff like that. Do you see yourself, after your kids are maybe grown or go off to college, or besides just your purpose of being a father, for you yourself, what do you see yourself doing, I guess, in the next 10 years? Or what do you see yourself transitioning into after your kids are off of college? Like, just maybe your calling. What do you think?
Helping and serving others, man. Helping and seeing them grow.
Yeah.
You know, not to. I mean, obviously, right? You want to manifest, you know, verbally what you want to do, but, and I've shared this with a few friends, you know, and I'll share it on public and live. I would love. One of the things I did when I was a kid was I helped show others play guitar. Maybe like at high school, at my high school when I went to high school, I played mariachi, right? So I learned it well. But there were some kids and people who I lived, who I was around in high school, that couldn't afford a guitar. I remember these people. So they'd use my guitar and they would play, and I kind of helped show them. But they never took off with it because they couldn't afford it. And so they pursued something else. Or maybe they would have pursued that, and then they wouldn't have gotten involved in, I'm just going to give an example, drugs, or maybe they wouldn't have gotten involved in gangs, or maybe they wouldn't have gotten involved in, a career that doesn't suit their financial needs. Maybe music would have been that career for them. They just couldn't afford it because of their lifestyle. So I would like to, it's crazy the idea I have, right? But it's like, buy a small piece of property, buy some portables, like the old Idea School when they first started it here. They had those portables. I don't remember them. They're like little portable RVs. They're like hollowed out. They put desks and chairs inside them with AC units, and start a free music school. Have people volunteer, and for any income, what do you call it? Any financially difficult family that can't give that to their kid.
Man, that'd be awesome, bro.
For here in the valley. And you know how many kids it would take from the streets, from that do all of these things? Shoot, I mean, rap. You start a singing music school for boys and for girls. Piano, guitar, and they don't have to, you know, there'd be no graduation, or maybe there would be some kind of ceremony, but it wouldn't be like a school that I'm getting, like I wouldn't be an accredited school. It would just be something that people in this area would volunteer their time to give to help others musically grow, so they could potentially maybe do something with their life with it, or it could take them from doing something bad. And that is
for sure, at the very least, it's going to contribute in a positive way.
Yeah.
They might not be a professional pianist in an orchestra or whatever, but for sure, it's going to contribute in a positive way. I mean, I don't know if you know Inky Johnson.
Oh yeah.
And he's not the only one. Mike Tyson. What if there was no custom model for Mike Tyson?
Yeah.
Or that coach that Inky Johnson speaks of, that him and his brother were playing street football with no shoes on.
He went to his house, and because his parents weren't home, the coach has to end up meeting the uncle.
Right.
And the uncle tells him, "We don't have any money."
Right.
He goes, "It doesn't matter about the money. I'll pay for their registration."
Right. Just bring them there. Get them there.
It's an amazing story too.
Bro, it's an amazing story, and I'm sure those are just we know of. There's probably hundreds,
and
thousands.
those were the few people that tried their best to make it an impact and influence in that community. I mean, and now look at who he became, right? I mean, wow, you know. I mean, and I mean, his story is totally amazing. He went from sports to motivational speaking, you know, because of an injury.
Right.
But had that guy never shown up to his house, I mean, who knows where the kid would have been? But look at where he ended up. And so that's why, I think about that, and I see like a lot of kids, you know, that they have these passions, you know, and I just happen to be somewhat musically inclined to be able to help kids grow in that passion. I mean, if I was sports inclined, I would want to start a sports school that, you know, offers, you know, private lessons for kids, and, you know, whatever sports, you know, we could offer, you know, for free, you know. And I say the word free because I wouldn't want them to feel like I'd want for, you know, a child or a kid or whatever age group to come in and knock that door open and then say, "I don't have a guitar. It's all right. We have one right here for you." And now they get to come and play guitar and learn guitar. And now this is a place that they want to be. And maybe we'll offer some sort of transportation. I really don't know. It's kind of like, this is just the beginning. I've had this idea for a really long time, maybe about 10 years. And I've decided that, to answer your question, that is what I will end up doing as my purpose 20, 15 years from now, and doing as long as I possibly can. There's a lot of people who also want to help, you know. You're not going to do it alone. You know, you partner up with churches and communities and, you know, people who, you know, want to help in that aspect.
Right.
You partner up with them and you present, "Hey, this is what we're doing for the community, and this is how we're doing it." And you'd be surprised the crowd of people that gets behind you or around you, and now you're like a naval destroyer ship going full speed in the water. And I mean, nothing can get in your way.
Yeah.
You know, it all starts with that one little idea. How it's going to happen, I don't know. How big will it become? I don't know. If I can just help one kid once a year, I'd be more than happy.
That's true, man. It's just willingness amongst the people, and people, yeah, they overcomplicate themselves, man. But if one person donates an RV, or another person just donates $10, or 1,000 people donate $1, it's $1,000. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I want to do the same thing for sports, particularly any sport. I'd be open to do any sport. I want to start with martial arts, like jiu-jitsu and boxing and stuff.
Yeah.
But I've thought about the same thing, and that's one
You've
thing
done that for a while.
Huh? Yeah.
Yeah, you've been there for a while.
I've been doing that for a while, for a little while. Yeah. And that's one thing I aspire to do. And I mean, sports in so many ways, and we could just go down. I won't go down that, but it's so representative of life in so many ways.
There's fulfillment in being able to help and see others grow.
Yeah.
When I can just sit back, look at my boys, look at people I work with. I mean, look at just anyone in general and say, "Wow, that person grew, amazing." There's so much fulfillment in that.
Yeah.
You know, and not just, like I said, you know, growth is important to me, right? And others. But I think also that fulfillment helps you grow in its own sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, growth and purpose, man.
Yeah, man. You know, Feed 'em If AIDS, the one that I did the charity haircuts with when Brandon Figueroa. Did you see us out there?
Yeah. No, but I'm familiar with it.
Bro, this is free haircuts. Man, I was so blown away. They were giving out bikes and stuff that day, bro. There was such a long line, bro, for kids to get them haircuts, man. And shout out to Feeder, man. If everybody's watching hashtag, I think he usually hashtags himself, Feed 'em If AIDS, FIRME, for those who are more familiar with English, and the fades ends with the Z. But man, bro, that dude is doing crazy stuff in the community. He's always doing charity events. But the point that I want to make about him, bro, is it's funny because he has like this little squad of little boys, bro. I don't know. I think they're just like from his neighborhood, or maybe he might be cousins or relatives of a couple of them. But bro, they follow him everywhere, and they're like, and if you're ever doing a charity event and you're there, you'll see the boys are not walking around with the phone and they're taking this video and stuff like that, man. And he's had it is amazing. It is amazing, man. I'm reminded of a quote. I heard this quote. It's actually in a song. It's a verse in a song, but he says, "It's hard to be cold-hearted when the love is warm, but in the womb of child neglect is where a thug is born." And you're right, bro. There's so many kids out there, man, that their parents are just overloaded in bills and responsibilities and just making ends meet. And all they need, bro, is one person to come along and be like, "Hey, man, let's come hang out, watch me cut hair." And they show him a whole barber industry. That's what he's doing with this kid. Or, "Hey, man, let's go sign up. I'll give you a ride." And it doesn't take a lot, man. To this day, the only thing that Inky Johnson, coach, sends him now is for Christmas. He says he sends him a pack of underwear. I think.
Oh, really?
Like underwear and socks. Yeah, bro,
That's
it's
awesome.
funny. You know? I mean, what beyond right did he do? But, bro, look at the impact, man.
And you know what's so cool about that, man, is that he made what could have been disability into an ability.
You're talking about Inky now, what he does in the speaking? Yeah. Anybody look up Inky Johnson. One of my favorite videos is Impose Your Will. But yeah, bro,
it's just so good. And there's a lot of kids that, and I'm not saying a disability could be physical. I'm not saying a disability could be mental. I'm not saying a disability could be something that person has. It could be they just growing up in a very poor home, and that's their disability. But you can help be the ability to them by offering, sports lessons for free, music lessons for free, haircuts to your friend, that the way he's doing it for the community, and now you got an entourage of kids, and now kids that want to aspire to be like you, and now they went from what was a disability now to an ability in a different way, and you're helping do that for them.
Yeah. Man, bro, that's so deep. I was just thinking my song. But anyways, hey, well, it's been great, Josh.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you for having me on here, man. Thank you so much, and thank you for anyone watching. Just really, really humbled to be on here, man. God bless.
And God willing, let's see how soon we can establish some charity thing like that, man.
That'd be awesome.
Thank you for your time, bro.
Yeah, for sure.